right, gang. Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for being here. We're happy to have you. And this is our second to last Athletic Solutions webinar of the year. We have one more coming up. And I believe, what is the last one? I know we've got one more and I'm totally drawing a blank. We have one more coming up at the end of the season. Oh, it's Ski Strong, of course. It's Ski Strong. So that'll be in September, because you remember you want to do your Ski Strong program at least 8 weeks before ski season starts. So in our area here, remember I'm in Northern California, between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe. So usually the ski resorts open right around Christmas, New Year's. That's if we have like a semi-decent winter. So about 8 weeks. I'd rather it be a little more. So always kind of keep that in mind. 8 weeks is always a really good chunk of time to prep somebody for any kind of season coming up when we do our golf and tennis, if you're hiking, anything like that. So we kind of put this one in. It was supposed to be a few weeks ago. My father fell and broke his hip in 3 places, and we had trips to Florida and moving them here and rehab centers and all kinds of stuff going on in life. So we had to bump this back a little bit, but we really appreciate everybody being here. And to remember to get the NSCA CEUs, you guys do need to sign up for the Athletic Solutions series that you do on the website. So just head over to Training the Older Adult. It's all free. Just head to the Training the Older Adult website and you'll see it when you click on courses. Just click on Athletic Solutions, put in your name and your email, and you guys are in. And what that gives you is access here. Let me show it to you here real quick. It gives you access via the Kajabi app. See that little blue one right there? That's our website host, and so you tap on that, and there's all the courses, and so you'll find one that says Athletic Solutions, that guy right there, and then when you click on that, there's all of them. Gardening, essentials, golf, hiking. We'll have a new Ski Strong. This is the other one that's coming up. So they're all there. You can watch all of them, and once they're all checked off and complete, you get all 6 CEUs. So a little hint, you don't have to watch all of them, but I would love it if you would, and then you get the CEUs. All right. Let's dive into this. I want to spend about 20 minutes-ish kind of talking about injuries and other things that you can kind of expect, and then I have everything set up behind me, and I'm going to take you through 12, maybe a little bit more exercises that I think, along with any other traditional strength training movements, are only going to benefit pretty specific to what we're doing. Now, it's a little bit overkill if you're a walker, right? If you're like, I go for a half-hour walk every day doing the stuff that we do in here, you're gonna be more than ready. So I would say this is more trekking / hiking a little bit. And then I will show you a couple of the things that we have for like expedition mountaineering, which I've had some good experiences with, and which I did today. If you were on my Instagram, or you see that I do every Saturday, I do a little trek in our neighborhood and change my variables and heights and elevations and load and all that. So we'll talk about that. If this is your first time seeing me present, a little bit of info about me there. Master's degree in personal training from the United States Sports Academy. My whole life has been dedicated to this since 1999. Even before, as an athlete and a thrower, learning how to use the hips and the lower and taking care of the lower back. And I really made the jump towards older adults, specifically in 2004. When I got my very first client, Ruth, who was Super G and downhill masters ski champion, and she blew up her knee and needed some help, and I was the guy that she picked. Very, very quick story. I've had 14 different surgeries. I've had 4 hip arthroscopies, 3 hip replacements, 1 dislocation, thus the 3rd one, wrist surgeries, lower back surgery, tumor removal from my lung cancer, and thyroid cancer. I had my thyroid taken out, hernia repairs, carpal tunnel, ganglion cyst, ligament tear in my wrist, all kinds of good stuff. The reason I tell you all that is that's where all of my experiences, when I get to reflect on, when you feel this and you'll feel that, it's coming from a place of experience, but also obsession. My mind works this way. When I'm either with a client that I don't know something about or going through it myself, I dive deep into that content and I learn as much as I can. So all of this, here are the gory pictures of my lung being removed. That I won't leave that up very long, but those are the ones that, that was the surgery that really was like the hardest thing for me to rehab from. My first back injury came from, not from throwing the hammer, but from years of asymmetry-based training, meaning I turn to the left, I throw and lift to the left. And so I built a body throwing the hammer, throwing the discus, early in my life, throwing the shot put, where turning, rotating, lifting, pulling from one side and pushing with the other really made a lot of imbalances in my body. My back was the first thing to go. My hips followed closely after that. And without diving deep into all my other stuff, I want to specifically talk about my low back because it led me to mountaineering, to hiking and trekking, and a passion for that. This is one of the biggest injuries you're going to see with trekking, walking, hiking, or a lot of lower back injuries. Typically, sciatica will be one of those. In most cases, will be one of the indicators that something's going on. A lot of times, you don't actually have lower back pain. You have sciatic symptoms that start in the back but run down your leg. And in this case, a lot of this came from my throwing and lifting and just obsession of training and not really knowing what I was doing. So I had my first major injury in my lower back where I'm pretty certain I bulged a disc on January 1st, and then I ruptured it on April 11th. And 3 days later, if you know back injuries, when you start losing control of your movements, that's bad news. That means that the nerves are really in danger, and it can be pretty serious. So 3 days after I had that experience, lovely to share with all of you, and had to have surgery right away. So I began my rehab April 15th. May 31st, my wife and I were, I began rehabbing on April 15th. My wife and I were married on May 31st. I was able to dance and kind of do some basic stuff at the wedding, but still was pretty stiff. And then by July 2nd, I was pretty much fully back in action. I had a discectomy, which is this guy here, where they trim away the rupture and basically either cauterize or kind of sew things back together, and then just hope that you don't do the things you were doing that made all the, as my doctor described it, crab meat push out and push onto the nerves here, as you see in this picture. That's exactly where my injury was, and that's what gives you all that sciatic pain. So they just trimmed all of this stuff away and made my life so much better. But I still get little warning signs here and there that things are not good. If I do too many bendovers incorrectly, or if I'm twisting with weight or anything like that, a lot of jumping, which most of that is in the rear view for me. One thing that I wanted to do in the fact I'm going to tell you about Frank Slackman, a gentleman that I got to work with. He was attempting to climb all 7 summits, the highest mountain on every continent. And he had done Aconcagua, which is in South America, and he came to me and he goes, I just got my ass kicked on this mountain. I need a trainer. Do you know how to do that? And I was the only CSCS in the gym, and so he was referred to me as an athlete. And I said, well, I haven't had this experience, but I have an idea of what we can do. And he goes, great, let's do it. So I trained him for Denali, Mount McKinley in Alaska. And he did it, and he did well, but he didn't feel great about it. And he goes, look, I got 5 more of these to do. I got to get in good shape. You need to know what I go through. And so we decided that I would train to climb Mount Rainier. And it just kind of happened the same time that my back surgery happened. So now I had a reason to rehab, but also a goal to go and do this. So I left for the summit for Mount Rainier on September 9th, and 2 days later we reached the summit, and it's still to this day one of the greatest experiences I have ever had, and where a lot of my obsession for the Into Thin Air's 3 Cups of Tea, a lot of the great classic books and stories about mountaineering came into view, and a passion for me to want to climb came in. I made it through Rainier and started training 20 of my clients who all wanted to climb Mount Shasta with me. And 4 weeks before we attempted that climb was when I was diagnosed with my lung cancer. I had to drop out, finished everybody through training. We actually waited 4 weeks to get everyone through training. And then as they were attempting to climb, I went in for surgery. And not having the other lung is not a great opportunity for me to go to altitude and push, and there's some dangers there. So that was kind of the end of my career, but I had my one climb. But I had a very good experience doing this, and where I really got into the mindset of, I think I know, there's a lot of people that want to climb Everest or any of the other big mountains, K2 or any of them. They will come to Rainier and they'll train in Rainier. And there are multiple different routes, and some will have glaciers and crevasses that you can train in, and ladders, and the other side you can basically just kind of not trek, but you can just go up without any of those. still rather difficult, and there's all kinds of open exposures and basically the same experiences you'll have on Everest, just twice as low, right? You're at 1410 at the top of Everest, or at the top of Rainier, and you're at 29,000 plus on Everest. So a whole different experience. Excuse me. But you can get a lot of the training in. So I got a lot of that, and I got to bring that back and go, okay, now I've got an idea how I can build this program for Frank. And so he went to Everest, made it to 27,000 the first time, got caught in a storm, got turned around, came back 2 years later, made it to the summit. It just happened to be the year that the Discovery show Everest was there. And so in season 3, there's a what is he, a trucker? No, he's a motorcycle guy, big motorcycle guy. I think his name's Terry or something like that. He's like 6'6", beard. He's been on a couple other of their Discovery shows. And he went up to climb, and Frank's with him. Like they're in 2 different groups, but he's there on the summit at the same time. And really cool to see that, like to watch that show and know that my guy's there doing it. So that was such a cool experience, and getting to watch all the updates from day to day and all that kind of stuff. So that's where all my history and my efforts kind of come into this in a very quick little 10-minute window. I like to establish some credibility, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're the hip and lower back guy and you work with older people. I've had a lot of clients that have gone on treks and have gone to base camp in Everest, and we've trained for a lot of it. It's kind of a secondary area, I guess I would say, of something that I'm really passionate about and I like to train people for. So this one for me in particular, though I golf, I'm a terrible golfer, this is something that I really like. All right, hold on just a second, guys. All right, sorry about that. We have really bad fires in our area. If you saw my picture this morning of our track, it's literally orange outside. Like our entire area is orange, and we have ash falling, so our breathing is not great. But we got to put the work in. Okay, really quickly, I want to go through these 7 injuries. And the reason I want to go through these is, number 1, so you can talk to your clients about it. Number 2, give them some kind of idea of how to, if this occurs, how to treat themselves. And then preventative stuff is everything we're going to do out here. But you'll kind of notice like symptoms and treatment are pretty much the same for almost all of this stuff, okay? So let's quick burn through these. The sprained ankle, you're rolling, twisting, or turning your ankle into a point where the ligaments that support it overstretch, and because they've overstretched, the body's defense mechanism is to swell up all the bursa sacs in that joint to stiffen it, to not allow it to do what you just did to it again. So it's kind of like, remember that James Bond movie where he's in the avalanche and he's falling, the new James Bond, and he's got the suit, he pulls the cord and it makes like the whole little thing around him, the bubble, and he can breathe in it, and he's stuck in there with Halle Berry or whoever it is for like 3 hours until rescue. Darn, right? So it's like that, but in your ankle. It's like pull the cord and it just swells up, and that's why you see like a basketball player roll it. The whole rest, ice, compression, elevation is really not the best thing to do. They tape it right away, they put compression on it, and they're like, don't stop moving. Just keep walking back and forth. And you try to use that compression to help you push all that fluid and that swelling out, because it just happened. If you rest and lay down and don't move it, it just swells up even more. So really, if someone sprains their ankle, ideally you want them to like cinch up their shoe or tape up their foot. And that's where like carrying rolls of just some old school athletic tape. Mine's blue because that's my favorite color, but the white tape, whatever you get, carry some of those with you. You'll see a lot of mountain climbers just have a few of them like clicked and hanging onto the outside of their bags. And that's for that particular reason, the wrist and the ankle, to make sure they can tape up real quick and support it. Symptoms there: pain, tenderness, swelling, bruising, instability, etc. And then compression is huge. The guy, I forget his name, I always ask Keeg, but she's not here with me today, what the guy's name is that did rest, ice, compression, elevation. And like 6 or 8 years ago in an interview, he said, the biggest mistake I made was the rest part. He goes, the ice is only good for the first like 2 to 24 hours in terms of actually having a benefit to help reduction of swelling. Beyond that, it's mostly just therapeutic. It's just like mindset of numbing if it's painful, but it's not really healing a whole lot necessarily. And then when you see people doing like Joe Rogan's doing ice bath dunks and sitting, and that's a whole different therapy response. It's not for a particular injury in that case. So, but he's like, the rest is the biggest mistake I made. You're not supposed to lay down and relax and not do any of that. The elevation is key, particular with limb injuries, ankle, knee, hand, elbow. Everything else is kind of level, so it's difficult to like elevate your hip injury above your heart when they're at the same height, right? So kind of keep that in mind as we go. Blisters and toe bang. These suck. I have had both, and that is not my foot on the right. That's a picture I got off the internet, but that's the best picture I could find of toe bang. Definitely, it's not overly gross. There were some grosser ones, but it gives you an idea of what it is. Those are my feet on the left. That is after Rainier, after my boots were literally 1/2 size too big. And with the billion steps that I took up and down, my foot shifting forward and back just a little bit, did that. Now, if you guys can't see exactly what's going on there, let me show you. Look at the blisters. Okay, you see those little blisters there, and the ones that look like little fingerprints. That's not like discoloring. These are huge blisters right here. Oh, watch this. Let me do. Where's this guy and then that guy? Watch this. Right. Boom, right there, and boom, right there. Those, right? Not let alone these guys. Look at this grossness down here, okay? All right, so then we're gonna move on here. Oh, I gotta close this. There we go. Oh, a little bit closer. You can start to see it a little bit more. You'll notice the tape. I'll tell you about the tape a little bit more. You want a closer look? Yep, a closer look. Look how gross. Oh, I know, sorry. I had to show you guys. Okay, so what happened there is when my feet were hurting, we were halfway down. Dave Hahn, if you know the world of mountaineering, Dave frickin' Hahn was my guide. He comes back to RMI, Rainier Mountaineering Incorporated. He comes back, he and Ed Viesters come back, and they lead one trip a year because they're huge success climbers. They're climbing all over the year. They do at least one a year. I just happened to pick the one that he decided to try. And not only was he my guide, because I was the biggest guy in the group, I was tied to him because he's like 6'5". He's probably 180 pounds. I was like 260 at the time. I was very big. But he's like, you're with me. You're my guy. You need to be right behind me. I think he wanted a good anchor in case he fell in. But anyhow, he looks at my feet and he goes, this is bad. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you're injured, number one. He goes, but getting down is going to be painful. I need to do this. So he takes out old school duct tape and just starts duct taping my feet, the whole bottom of my feet. And he goes, the worst part's going to be when we get down. So my boots were gray. They were red when we got to the bottom, and they just put my feet. They had all these ice baths out, like igloo, boxes, ice boxes with beer for everybody to drink. They brought me in. I walked all the way in, and they just stuck my feet into that thing, and the water was pink, and it was miserable. And I just had to leave my feet in there until the tape started to kind of peel off. So really bad injury. Okay, very, very bad injury, significant. When your feet hurt, everything is going to hurt. Every single step sucks. So make sure if you're going to wear boots, you test them. I didn't test mine. I just got the ones they gave me when I got there. I thought I had the right ones and had been training in those, but they weren't. So they made me change right when we got there. And you'll see all kinds of issues. The toe bang one, your shoe's too big, and so your foot's just slamming forward with every step. Not so much on the way up, you're more blister, but on the way down is when you're really going to get a lot of the toe banging. And it really, really suffers, and your nail will fall off. If not, nails will fall off. The rest ice compression elevation, as we talked about, specific to hand and foot injuries, really, there's not a way to like not rest your hand and your foot. Meaning if you roll the ankle, but with your hand, you're kind of resting it all the time as best you can. Pack ice on it, wrap it up nice and tight, put it over your head if you have like a wrist injury, but in this case with the feet, you just got to do your best. Soap and water, they're very easy to get infections in here. So in like this open wound here on my ankle, on my left foot there, the one on the right in the picture, very easy to get infected. So big soapy materials, antibacterial, all that kind of stuff, okay? All right, come on, keep on moving. Oh, I got to close this. My animation guy. All right. The shin splint. Oh, this one's rough. So this is medial or anterior tib pain. What's happening is if your shoes don't fit right, your foot's going to slap down. If the heel of your shoe is too big or too long, your toe will slap down. Think of it like a longer lever. So even if the heel of your shoe, you'll see different shoes. I should have brought those pictures. Damn it. I took pictures of it too. Somebody remind me at the end if we have it. I have pictures of shoes where I'm like, that's a toe bang shoe or a shin splint shoe, where the heel sticks out like 1.5 inches. And because of that extra 1.5 inches, you can have upwards of like 20 or 30% more slap of your foot coming down to the ground. So that one's a really rough one you got to focus on. The shoes have to fit. Downhill running or just really weak muscles, repetitive reps over and over and over again start to bow and like stress the shins, and then the muscles around that start to ache. If you're doing a lot of downhill walking or running, you're dorsiflexing a lot and having to eccentrically lower your foot down. And eventually, because you don't train those all that much, that eccentric strength runs out and your foot just starts slapping with every step because you just can't control it. So your shins take all the swelling or all the pain, and they just swell up, and it sucks. Ice cube massages are the best things. Get your Dixie cups, fill them up, freeze them, and then tear off the top half of the Dixie cup so you can hold the ice cube and it's not freezing your hand, and then just massage your shins just up and down, up and down, up and down. The cold is nice because it'll numb it, but the therapy is the massage with the ice cube. That's really nice. There are different techniques of taping them. Like you can get some of this tape, I forget what they call it. This is that athletic keto tape, or KT tape. There are other ones. I got this for Keeg for her knee. She's having a little knee injury right now. So you can do that and tape your shins and give them some different supports and such. This can be very debilitating in pains to the point where you just don't want to move anymore. And then orthotics, changing your shoes often. A very good tip is to write the date that you get your shoes on the side of the shoe, and then, or make a calendar reminder in your phone to change your shoes every 3 months if you're using them daily. Don't lift weights in the shoes that you run or walk in. You should have separate shoes for that, etc. All of that is very specific for all the rest of the injuries we have here. Plantar fasciitis is stretching and or aggravation of the tissue that runs under your foot along the transverse arch. That's the fascia there is your plantar fascia. So you're going to stress that guy from lots of impacts. If your feet are flat and you're in shoes that don't support, heavy impacts without eccentrically controlling your foot to the ground, overstriding. So there's a lot of blocking impact back through your foot and your ankle and your knee. There's just a lot of different impacts and ways that you can stress this to develop this guy. When you sleep, it'll shorten and kind of crust up. So it's worse usually in the morning. You start moving around. It takes a while to warm it up. It'll feel better. And then anytime you start to relax and your foot will kind of naturally plantar flex when you're sleeping, it'll shorten up and tighten and hurt again. There are these splints that they have. It's basically a sock. It's two-sided, so you slide your foot in, and seamed to the toe is another sock, a tie-off, and you tie that back to your ankle or your ankle or your shin, and that holds your foot at 90 degrees or even in a little bit of a dorsiflexion, so you don't plantar flex while you're sleeping, to help you rehabilitate it. Again, all this is physical therapy based. You should talk to your therapist or your doctor about utilizing those techniques. I'm just telling you that they're out there. And these are things you could just go to the store and buy them. Like, you don't have to have a doctor's note to buy one of those, but make sure you're talking to somebody who knows that, oh, this will work well for this particular case and so on. In most cases it does. And then your ice cube massage, all that same stuff works really well. Achilles tendonitis, basically the same injury, just to this tendon now, to this fascia here. And it, again, will be worse in the morning because it tightens up. Found most often in runners, can lead to an Achilles tear or further injury there. So this is kind of a precursor, like, hey, something's really wrong here, so be careful. Achilles tears are very difficult to rehabilitate. It's a long time to do it, and in many cases, you're not the same athlete you were prior to. So be careful and listen to this Achilles tendonitis warning. If that is the sense that you're getting, make sure you're taking a little bit further care and seeking more medical advice to make sure you're not leaning towards a tear, because this is one of the worst ones. Other than like a patellar tear, which is significant, a pec tear, a bicep tear where it literally severs off, the Achilles is maybe the worst one. So please be careful with that. Same therapies, same treatments, right? Different massages, ice cubes and such. Physical therapy is going to be a big point of this, and learning the right exercises to help improve it. No pain, no gain is one of those mindsets. I always joke and say, no pain, no gain, no brain. So don't just push yourself through things that hurt and suffer because you think it's good for you. And there are some therapies that require that. If that's the case, make sure you're doing the right ones. Listen to your physical therapist. Don't just do stuff because you think it'll make you better. and then gradual increases of activity. This is one of the ones that if you overdo it quickly, you'll be back on the shelf. Patellar tendonitis, but basically the patellar tendon and then the patellar ligament. So your tendons attach bone to muscle, and then the ligaments attach muscle bone to bone. Excuse me. So on either side of the patella, basically, you're stressing the potential for this guy, for this injury. And the tendinosis just means, any itis means inflammation. So the tendon's getting inflamed, tendonitis. It means that you're lending towards a more severe injury if you're not careful. Super painful with this one as well. It'll stab you in the knee. People will put on these little braces that just push on it so you don't feel it anymore, but that's not fixing the issue. It's just blinding you to the negative response. So that's not going to fix anything. You're going to end up hurting yourself even worse. So I'm not a big fan of that. Known as jumper's knee. So a lot of physical therapy will work on eccentric loading, eccentric strength training, isometric holds and different flexions and degrees to help you improve your strength there, and eventually you should be able to jump and run and do all that again. Not super common in terms of like, oh, that's a very common hiking injury. It's just from falling really, but you're falling, if we're walking, trekking, hiking, mountaineering, you're falling into areas that are really rough. So these hand injuries can really hurt you. You got to make sure that wrists are strong, hands are strong. And if you are taking falls, I know it's weird to not want to put your hand down, but injuries like this can ruin a whole trip. So you got to be very careful there and make sure your wrists and your hands are trained and strong. Basically a stretch, again, just like an ankle sprain at the wrist, and you have all these ligaments, look at them all, right? All those ligaments that you can damage or hurt in there, and pain, swelling, stiffness, bruising, all that. Braces are okay if you need it in the moment, but long-term, you just got to get it strong again. And then lower back pain, very common, as you can see all the stats here, how many people have it. The reason I bring that up here is because unless you're just walking, any other trekking, anything else, you're going to be, packing gear, carrying backpacks. You really want a backpack that is hip based, that you cinch up above your iliac crest, the top of the hip, and the load will sit on top of the pelvic crest, the iliac crest, not around your hips, squeezing you. That actually like cinches down, aggravates the hip flexors. So you want it to sit a bit higher and to kind of sit like a belt squat, which I'll show you here, kind of like a belt squat around the top of your hip. And that takes off a lot of pressure off your back because it's now built around your hips to support the load. And then the straps basically just keep it from tipping over, right? So that stress down on your shoulders and all that, it just tears up your back. So got to be careful. Gave you some extra little thoughts here. Sciatica is a really big one with this sporting component, walking all the way to mountaineering. And then this article was particular. A lot of the injuries we just talked about, I just thought this was pretty cool. I think this was from Outdoor Magazine, if I remember correctly. And I will post the works cited for that article in the Kajabi app. I just saw one of you say that you're going to have to bail out or that you came on late. Yes, everything's being recorded. It's on demand, so the same link that you're using will get you back here. Plus, I'll post it on YouTube and on our page. Volume controls. So I suggest 2 days of strength, 2 days of muscular endurance per week. And this is at least 8 weeks prior to your attempt. Some basic strength training, I'd say 24 to 48 hours. You're looking at least 24 hours in between your training cycles here. And then I like to do like a strength day, endurance day, rest, strength day, endurance day, rest. And then usually on the rest days, you're doing activity. Excuse me. Jeez, you're doing, killing me, Rob. Come on, man. You're doing active recoveries where you're out walking or hiking or trekking. Sorry. 3 to 5 reps, 3 to 5 sets for strength, 3 to 4 for endurance, and notice the reps and the load differences, okay? Muscular endurance, you still need load, and that's where a lot of times people are like, oh, I've just been working with my body weight, or I wear my backpack. Like, that's fine too, but we've got to do some really good resistance training, even to a point that is very beneficial, but I won't talk about today necessarily because it's more programming, is HIRT training, high intensity resistance training, is super beneficial for this sport. And you can do it more LSD style, long, slow distance, meaning that you're doing an interval spike and then take a decent recovery and then a spike and a recovery and spike and recovery. But those spikes aren't body weight lifts, they're resistance training lifts. So it's kind of like faster paced circuit training, more or less, is how I could describe that. And you can do that for 45 or 60 minutes. That's where the long, slower distance idea of the merging of those two come together. So now you get like a 60-minute HIIT session that is great to transfer into, you know, trekking, hiking, because you're like, if I can do this higher, harder work for an hour, working at like half this capacity with half the load for 2 or 3 hours is going to feel like nothing. So in a sense, it is overtraining, but it's a good overtrain. I'm going to go through all these with you guys. I will give you the PDFs once we get it all posted. But if you want a snapshot, go ahead and screenshot this real quick. We're going to go through all these here in the next half hour. And I'm going to demo. Please take notes. If you have questions, let me know. And then just one more reminder, make sure you go to the website. If you want the CEUs, go to the website. And this little guy right here, click on that and you'll see courses. Click on that. It'll take you to Athletic Solutions. Again, there's no charge. You don't have to put in anything other than your email address, because we email you the certificate for CEUs that says that you attended. All right, and then there's the little reminders, all the things that we're going to talk about here that you want to train. Okay, let's get into this. So a couple of these, again, like I mentioned, you're like, oh yeah, these are like, you know, more or less like a traditional kind of strength training piece. There's just little things that we're going to do that are slightly different, that are going to do a little bit more of a mountaineering, hiking, trekking component to it and lend towards that. So the first one are your loaded carries. And I like to set up some, I call them like a relay or a course that you can kind of put through your facility. So we'll do a loaded carry. I like farmer carries, meaning that we're holding a weight in each hand. They can be uneven loads. That's totally okay. It could be like a 25 pounder and an 18 pounder or something like that. Just remember, we call it the gunslinging position, that you don't just hold the weights at your side and let them dangle. You retract and pull them back like the gunslinger position, like you're holstering. So that just keeps your upper body active, and then we carry from there. And then when carrying, that's a reason and a particular verbiage that I use, that they're not called farmer walks, they're called farmer carries, because we are working on a smoother, smaller gait that helps me kind of glide and keep this load constant, steady, where it's not bouncing up and down. If I take my regular gait, I get a up, down, a sway, a swing. I want to just lower my center of mass, move a little shorter in my gait, but faster in that turnover, okay? So part of that is you can do little relays like this with multiple steps, where I can go 1, 2 onto the box, eccentric control down, opposite foot, eccentric down, opposite foot, eccentric down, and then carry, carry, carry wherever I go, like across the gym, come back, and then I can go back through this guy. Because one of the hardest things to replicate, we can climb up all day long in the gym. I can have steps, and we can do step ups till we're blue in the face. I'm just all day up, 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 up. And you'll go out on your trek or climb, and you'll do great getting to the top. And the down is going to be miserable because all the down eccentric impacts that you're going to take, odd angles, toes, knee over toe, all these positions, and you'll be like, shit, we didn't train for this at all. So very few places have those stair step machines, right? The reciprocal ones like an escalator. Very few gyms have the one version of that that goes the opposite direction, where you turn around and step down, right? Which would be a great tool to have. Imagine that with your backpack on and your hiking sticks, and you could like practice down trekking, down climbing. Awesome. So along with that, when we go into our next one here, step ups and step downs, the step down component is such a big deal for us. So let's go through step ups first. I put on there a 0 and a 45 because you do want to train different angles that you're stepping at. And then again, always change the load. You guys can change loads as much as you want in terms of, let's hold a kettlebell this time, let's do a sand roller on our neck next time, let's put on a vest the time after that, let's do a Zercher hold the time after that. Just constantly change it, right? So 0 degree, toe is straight. I'm going to step up onto the box, and where I want you to focus is why we call them step downs instead of step ups, is where's the focus? My focus is on the eccentric control back to the floor. Drive up, and then eccentric control back to the floor. These are slower, steady, more strength focused, right? I'm really trying to encourage my client, back this up, make sure you guys can get all me in there. We really want to encourage our client to build strength on the up, but to emphasize knee stability, strength, coordination, you know, these stabilizing muscles here, and eccentric back to the floor, where you can even peg leg. These are super difficult. Watch my back foot, okay? So this is a normal step up where I push off this rear leg, and then I land on my toe on the way down. Try this, get closer, lift your toe up, and don't jump off that back foot. Just peg leg it, meaning like the back foot, all I can do is sit onto that back heel. This leg does nothing else. Talk about work on this. I just did 2 of them and it's screaming. So those are very challenging. And then adding in stability, one of my other favorite ones is while the client's doing this, they're holding one of those orange bands. And while they're doing these guys, like 10 of them really slow, I'm holding the band and they're there. So I'm holding the band, and as they're doing their step ups, I move. So the tension that they are feeling is pulling them lateral, and then it's pulling to the corner and then to the front, and I'll move over to this side, and I'll get over here and I'll give it a little tug, you know, and you just kind of mess with them. And then I'll let it out a little so they have to correct. Those are the experiences they'll have being awkward, off balance, tumbling, tipping, you know, uncomfortable positions. Another thing that could be cool with this, I don't have one, but what could be cool is Perform Better makes like a false rock surface that people will step on for like acupressure of the foot. I've seen people put those on step ups. So when you're stepping up, it's odd angled positioning of the foot. It's just not always flat. And it is a good idea, maybe on strength days, to have your clients wear their boots or their hiking shoes on strength days for this kind of stuff. They should have cross trainers, right, that they use for their regular training sessions with you. But in certain cases, like, hey, let's break in that trekking shoe because we're going to be doing a ton of step ups and step downs. Let's work that shoe in. I even had clients that would wear their gaiters, like their covers for their shins. They would wear those and their backpack and their harness just so they could get used to and get the gear like broken in so it wasn't all stiff, you know? So that's totally cool. All right, so there's our loaded carries, and then our step ups and our step downs. Now we talked about a 0 degree. Let's talk about the 45-degree angle step up. I hesitate to use the term lateral step up because it really isn't. It is a 45-degree angle step. But this, number one, clients with ACL, MCL, LCL injuries or meniscus injuries, when they do a straight on step, there's like shear pressure, I guess I would call it, that can really aggravate. But when you ask them to go at an angle 45 and merge, I want to say, it's been a while since I saw that article. This was back in college. I want to say 60 or 70% reported it was much more comfortable for them. So it was a significant number of people that said this lateral shift, this 45-degree angle, was a lot more comfortable for them to perform the step up action. So if we're dealing with people that have any of those issues, use these. But for regular folk that are going to be climbing at odd angles, this is a great one to work on as well. So we call it framing, number one. The foot's on the box, and I need to push my body, my knee, my ankle, my hip, and my shoulder should all be inside the frame of the box. See how I just shifted onto there? So I don't want to be off on the right and then throw my body across and then drop out of the box. I want to stay in the frame, push onto the left leg, control back down, keep the load out here. But see how I kept the left side of my body in the frame? So basically, I'm not unloading this. I'm just stopping my downward momentum when I come down. But this little 45-degree angle shift of the mass is what takes that like straight on sagittal pressure on the knee and just softens a little bit. You got to think when you ever go hiking or trekking, again, steps that you take, paths, this and that, we're not always taking straight steps. So training these off angles are good. And then you can do the same one with a crossover step. Okay, so we get used to these crossover transitions, right? Be careful with your clients that have hip replacements because crossing the midline like I'm doing, not ideal unless it's been years since you've had it and it's really dialed in and strong. So straight on, 45, crossover, those are all very good progressions there. All right, one of my favorite low back exercises, I prefer to deadlift for my low back strength with the majority of my clients, but when I can take leverage and shorten it to my advantage, which really, in most lifting, you want to lengthen it to maximize your advantage if you think about it. So with this one in particular, I'm trying to shorten the torso and shorten my thighs to the point where the exact counter of the load that I'm lifting is going to be countered with my low back. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to train my lower back more efficiently by getting shorter and closer to what I'm targeting. So I like to do this with sandbags, but I'll show you with kettlebells as well. You can use dumbbells, you can use anything. As long as your client's comfortable kneeling. If they're not, just do a regular rack pull, okay? So kneeling position, sandbag in position here. I'm gonna hinge just like I would do if I were standing, but I'm in the kneeling position. Notice my toes are tucked and engaged. Always tuck and engage your toes. Don't do this where you point them. That makes your patella float. You tuck your toes and engage, like push with your feet. Your patella will lock in. It'll put it active. Think of like a pulley. It'll activate that patella and keep it engaged. Not only while you're kneeling on it with all of your body weight, but the extra load that you're now holding. So I'm gonna come out of my hinge, up, retract my shoulder blades back, come back low, down and deload. Like let the floor take the weight. Up, retract, down, deload. Up, retract, down, deload. Now I could do like 6 or 8 of these, and then I'll start to slow my tempo. So I'll retract and then slow this eccentric control down, deload, come up quick, slow, slow, slow. I'm just more time under tension. And all of this, because it's low and in front, my target's gonna be like mid upper thoracic spine, lumbar is just gonna kind of help my counter. So think of the backpack and anything else you're taking, like let's shorten this and let's just kind of target around this girdle of the back and just work some pulls. So standing will work just as fine, but I think you get a more specific approach to the lumbar, to the top of the hip, to that mid-thoracic spine kneeling. Same thing here, I can unlock my hips until the weights either get to the floor or get close, and then I can come up and retract, shift into my hinge, up and retract. What I don't want you to do is this, watch my torso, where the butt and the torso go back. It's not a quad extension. This is a different exercise, okay? This is an exercise to do, but not the one that I want. So start tall and displace, just like a hinge, just like an RDL, just like a swing, like any kind of action where you displace your hips, but you're countering your chest forward. And then that little retraction at the top, it's like a horizontal shrug. So most shrugging goes up, right? Think of it as like a horizontal retraction, like peacock kind of position, but back at a little 45-degree angle there. That's gonna get that levator scapulae, middle upper trap, all your rhomboid, posterior delt, major minor, or teres major minor, all of that musculature. And the more efforts I put there to support all the load that I'm gonna put on top of it, I think the better, okay? So be smart with your loads, smart with the controls that you're gonna put through that. Don't overlift people, and make sure the loads that you're asking them to lift are they're capable of doing. Okay, the belt squat. This guy, in terms of addressing load to the hip, more or less to train for the backpack support, like we were talking about, the mountaineering support. You can use any belt. I like this one from Alpha Strong because of this little seat belt feature. How easy is that, right? Just click in and click out. I don't know if they're selling these currently. They were a couple of years ago. And I know their sandbags and everything else they make are fantastic. I love the sand ball is my favorite tool. But this belt in particular, it's so easy to get on and off with that little seat belt. And then it has an attachment here, but you can use a dip belt. You can use anything that will brace over the hip. Now the benefit to this, and I know it looks a little silly, but you just got to get people over that. Especially if you have 2 kettlebells, it looks even funnier. My dad laughed so hard. I showed him a video. I'm like, look, Dad, I hit a new PR. And he's like, he just couldn't like keep a straight face laughing at me about it. But the benefit to this is, number one, we're loading about the hips. So the hips are getting the idea of what it feels like to take load. And so that will replicate the idea of the pack sitting around, but also just hip work in what we do when we're hiking. But we're also reducing that vertical compression on the spine. So I'm not huge on back squatting. I haven't back squatted anyone in 2 decades, unless they're a power lifter, which I've trained 2 in the last 2 decades. Okay. Outside of that, goblet squats, overhand squat, anything else, back to loading, I just don't think is great for you. So that compression is gone here. I'm just counterweighting, and in this we can hang on to stuff. You'll see people with a belt squat and like hang onto a bar in front of them. You can elevate so you can go a little bit deeper, like subfloor, totally up to you. I think just getting like a good comfortable belt where you're able to sit your hips back, displace, and just work this guy as deep and as controlled and comfortable as you want. You can hook like a band around the bell and then under your feet. So you have a progressive load, meaning as I come up, it's like tighter, 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 harder for me to lock out. And then as I come down, it gets easier, easier, right? So there's a very good belt squat option for you. They have other devices. You know, Sornex has a beautiful belt squat device that hooks to the squat rack. It's a big long lever arm. I've seen people create ones out of landmines. That is doable as well. Totally up to you guys, whatever you want to use. Just make sure it supports well at the hip and it should not hurt. If someone's wearing that belt and they're like, boy, it's digging into this or it's hurting me here, it's in the wrong spot. Get it high up on those hips, over the top, and it should feel rather comfortable, okay, while they're doing that. All right, this is a fun one. One of the only upper body ones I have in here. And I was saying like upper body strength is important. You guys, your basic pushes and rows and pulls, I would encourage you to do more rowing than pulling and pressing, just because I think the backside of the body is so important. It's what's going to hold up all the load that you're carrying. But this is one in particular that I really like to implement with my clients because it's kind of sport specific, if you want to call it that. So I just have 2 equal bands and I just hold the whole band itself, just right over the top, right? So I like create a handle. You don't have to put your hands in the band necessarily. So I just hold on to the whole thing. And then I step back into a position where I can do a row and kick back and down. And notice my hips, like I do a little counter hinge, just a little one, right? And then I can do a single. So as I start to replicate the idea of my contralateral pull trekking, like that's eventually what we're going to get to. But this is like a little half row, half kick. So you're working the whole backside of that shoulder girdle and then some really good tricep. Think of the wrist support and the wrist stress when you're pulling back and kicking down and not allowing the wrist to buckle or kink up. Very good wrist strength there. And then we can progress this as long as your client's coordinated enough. You can progress this to a contralateral step. So if I were pull trekking, I would drop back right foot and my left hand would have the counter trek pull. So I'm going to drop my right and kick my right band and then switch, kick, switch, kick, switch, kick. Think of it, so we're doing a tricep kick down, not necessarily what the pull would do, but if I were walking with this, it would be opposite pull, opposite pull, opposite pull, opposite pull, right? So I want to be active on the opposite hand, and then I can start to work back a little deeper. These are just little gate steps. And then your ultimate, you know where this is going, right? Is where we're going to drop step. But where's the beauty of this? Is it's harder for my arms to do that guy, but it's easier in a sense when I do the drop step lunge. Though I'm doing a deeper range and I'm stretching everything, the bands are pulling me up. So it's actually helping me. It's like deloading me to go lower. The band helps me come up more. So those clients that maybe who really can't do a drop step lunge or a split squat very well, adding this, right, 2 bands that they can engage on and get an extra 15, 20, 30 pounds of weight pulling them forward, they'll be able to go deeper. Look at my Instagram. I just posted a video of Linda doing the step up drop step complex where, imagine this was a box. She steps up on the box, off, and then drops into a drop step, but she's holding a band here. So as she goes here, the band is super tight and it pulls her up, but that's what her knee needs. So now I can work through a greater range of motion, but make her lighter than her own body weight. That's how winning is done. That's how the knee gets improved, right? How we go through that. So I really like this one, and I think it's a fun one that you can kind of build into. I've seen people that will take like trek pull handles and hook them on here and then do a little knot or a splint at the bottom and use the actual trekking pole handles and do that. Totally up to you. There's another grip out there called the E3, and that replicates, it's a running handle, but it replicates like a mountaineering stick or excuse me, a trekking stick. So you could do that. Okay, so those are kind of the big ones. Okay, let's look at some of the smaller, more detailed exercises to do. Let me use this guy. So with this one, this is, I have some old school ankle weights, which work great. You can find them almost anywhere, you know, like a Big Five, something like that. But there's gosh, what's his name? I always blank when I think of this guy. There's a guy, I'll see if I can find him. He invented the monkey foot. If anybody knows who I'm talking about, please post his name in the comment section there. The monkey foot is an ankle attachment that on the base of the heel has a place that hooks a dumbbell to it. So you can do hamstring curls and different simulated actions about the knee with the weight like as low as possible, and it's super difficult. It's awesome. So that same person has a board that you put your foot into. It's a board, both feet have, it's like a circular board. You slide your feet in, and on the other side of the board is a plate. And so when you're doing your dorsiflexors, you're pulling this plate up and down like 25 pounds, 35 pounds. I like to use these ankle weights for the same action. I think you kind of get the same play. You want it at the distal end of the foot, and then just seated, you know, doing your little dorsies here, working the biggest range of motion that you can. And in the beginning, you're like, I don't feel much. But when you start getting, you know, sets of 20, sets of 30, because remember, we're talking high endurance stuff here, right? So just the more that I do with this, you'll start seeing this here, you know, my anterior tibs, I'm starting to feel that. Posterior tib is a dorsiflexor as well. So you're going to get both of those that are getting some action there for you. And then if you want, you could take this off the floor. So you're getting a little iso squeeze. You're not getting as much work about the quad other than just holding your legs. I'm starting to feel it now. What am I, about 20 in? Okay, so you really start to get this guy feeling pretty good on you. And this is one of those, this is that anti-shin splint, anti-toe bang, like that's all that musculature that's going to help you on these downward climbs. Mind you, your shoes need to fit, but outside of that, you'll avoid a lot of those, okay? So that's a good one. Now, a secondary one to this is just put them on like normal. And I'm not a huge fan of like running around. There was this craze in the 80s. Let me know if you guys did this. I'm not teasing you because I did it too. But there was a craze in the 80s, early 90s where people would run around. They would run with their ankle weights on. And I trained a couple of guys in the late 90s, early 2000s that were servers, you know, waiters and such. And they would wear like 20-pound ankle weights under their pants. And they're like, I just want to get my legs real strong for ski season or whatever it is. And they all had hip issues. And I'm like, well, you guys, you know, you're taking like, I don't know, 10,000 steps a night, which I don't know if you guys have seen the new research that's supporting the average, the like optimal step counts per day should be between 6,500 and 7,500 of the 10,000 steps. It's technically classified as overtraining now. So unless you're a distance athlete, something like that, but for like everyday folks, and we're like 10,000 a day, 12,000 a day, it's too much. It's actually clinically showing for the blood testing and everything else that it's too much workload, that it's actually detrimental at this point. New information, but current. Just came out in the last, I don't know, 2 weeks. I will cite that as well. We just found that out from our friend Lisa McLean, Dan, our physical therapist, his wife, just told us about that yesterday. Okay, so these guys would be taking, you know, they'd be serving, doing whatever they're doing, taking 10,000 steps just at work, let alone everything else. And they all started getting these hip injuries because of this overload. It's just a massive amount of overload. So as with anything, too much of it is a bad idea. So here's the other thing we think about. We're like, well, what's the one thing we're going to do a ton of and we don't really need to train as walkers, hikers? Hip flexion. We do hip flexion all the time. Well, that's going to start to stress and aggravate if you ignore it. It needs overload just like anything else. So we need to kind of optimize our ability to hip flex. So I've got my mini band around the foot and my ankle weights on. And so I'm going to do a dorsiflex, march and hold, march and hold. And I like to work this guy as one of those primers. And you could do even like active recoveries. So let's say you just did all your dorsies, right? You just did 30 or 40 and your shins are all lit up. You're like, okay, let's go do our deadlifts. Give me a set of 20. Let's come back, do these guys while you're resting from the deadlifts. Then let's do our loaded carries, come back. Let's do our shin pumps. Then we'll come back. Like, these are all good in-betweeners, right? So just this little shift, little stabilization, little bit of work. I'm feeling all that about. But remember, it's got to be in a good athletic position. Don't let them tuck their butt. Don't let them round forward. You need the lumbar spine, which is the origin of the hip flexors, your major one, iliacus psoas, the iliac psoas. Those two need to be stable, and that joint has got to just stay put and allow that hip flexor to do its job well, not butt tuck or butt wank rounding. And now it's actually on slack and having to overwork. That's when doing this will be a bad idea, okay? So this is a fun one to do. Really enjoy that guy. And then you can, I have a RX pad single leg balance. And then let me show you the last one with the ankle weights. Just a little iso hold on the right. And ideally you do this, okay? These little lateral abductions here with a little load. I've got a little bend in both knees, okay? This is just learning stability at the joints, the ankle, the knee, the hip. You're just trying to stabilize. I could do 7 or 10 to the side, and then my glute extension, straight leg raise in the back. And then I can also do straight leg hip flexor work to the front. All with that just a little bit extra load, but my torso has got to be in that good loaded position. I got my butt out, so my glutes on while it's stabilizing me, where I work in all 3 directions, okay? Now to advance that one, ankle weights coming off. That's about the extent of the ankle weight work. I'll try to remember all these that I want to show you guys, but I'll put that link for the monkey foot and that board I was telling you about. I'll put that in the Kajabi link as well. So when you guys go to view this again and see the PDFs, they'll all be there. All right, this is another one. Just a little band. I love these little 1/4 inch bands, the orange bands. Low anchor, put that guy around the foot, and then what we just did was hip extension, hip flexion, hip abduction. What about the adductors, adductors? Though the majority of the lifts that we do encourage medial support from the adductor, lunging, stepping, squatting, all that, it doesn't primarily specifically target the adductor. So putting this in on occasion isn't a bad idea. I'm not going to say you have to do it every day or even every week, but on occasion, it's a good thing to train your adductors. And you can do it in the same setup you were just doing. Work your single leg stability and then pull the foot in, let it out slow, pull the foot in. Okay, I know it's a little hard to see because I'm in line with you guys, but I'll show you at an angle here. Like, you want to get into a position, over there, buddy, where 90 degrees ideally, okay? Dorsiflexed, pull in, and then as the band, wants to yank you back out, you really need to control, slow and steady, let it out. And do not cross the midline. Some people like to cross and go to the front. It kinks your hip and it makes you do this lateral shift that I'm not a huge fan of. It's like, I want to encourage you not to do that action. So I would stay and just bring your feet together, touch your arches together, and then move off it from there. All right, last couple minutes here. What do I got left? The calf pumps, overloads. I am a big believer in not doing single leg calf pumps. Unless you have a specific injury like an Achilles tear or something where you're trying to build back single ankle or single Achilles support, don't do them. But you have an asymmetry, you have an imbalance because of the sport you did or because of whatever it is, right? So here's how you build this. We lean in 10 to 15 degrees into the wall so it increases range of motion, and you hold like 35 pounds, 40 pounds on your right hand, and you do 15 calf pumps. Now I'm getting the range of motion because I have both feet on the ground and I'm stable. I'm not worried about balancing, but I'm overloading my right calf to do more work. And then I'll do another 15 with it on the other side. Now, which one do we do first? You do the weaker side first because that's when you're most fresh, okay? If you want to put down a 2x4 or something that'll elevate you, just make sure you can actually do the range that you're elevating to and that there's a bottom. I like the bottom out. I like to get to the point where your heels get the contact. Not only do you feel the success of I'm doing the range, but it gives you a goal. If you're just hanging off a 6-inch box, who knows if I'm going all the way down or not? I can't feel it, right? Long story short, single leg supports have proven not to increase range of motion because your body needs both ankles to push it through that range. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, 50-50, do 100% now. And the range gets really short. So then the Achilles shortens and tightens, and that transverse arch shortens and tightens, and plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendonitis and all that stuff will flare because you shortened it and overstressed it. Where if I can keep the range of motion, but add the load to the side I want to improve, then we can have a positive benefit there. So unless there's something specific to physical therapy, keep doing both feet. I say both feet on the ground all the time. All right, my last two, and I can kind of do them together. I'm still new to the world of vest training, but in terms of allowing load to be distributed about your body all the way around, totally makes sense to transfer this. So part of my Saturday trek, I wear this guy. I went further and towed more with me today. So I used a 20-pound vest as opposed to a 40 that I did last week, but I went a shorter distance. So those vests, front and back, they can load plates. There are other ones that have like 2-pound little pockets, and you can make it 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever you want. Mine are just, it's just a pocket, and you put a plate in there and you pull it out. And they have plates that are more specific to fit the device itself. So like this guy, it matches that device exactly, right? That's exactly how they sew it. But I just have like a 10-pound, regular 10-pound iron plate in there right now. So you can wear that guy and then do whatever. Like I do my vest workouts on Wednesdays. I'll do inverted rows, sit to stands, step ups, plank to push up, suspension push-ups, TRX push-ups, you know, anything. I'll push the tank, I'll hop on the bike, like I'll create a full body workout and even hold some extra weight in some cases. But the whole time I've got that extra load on me, training my core strength, training my hips to be prepared for the pack or for the big fanny pack, the day packs you can use. It just helps prep for that, okay? And then the lunges, and then I'm gonna show you with a bonus. I'm gonna give you guys a bonus. This guy, these are sand rolls. So let's see, Perform Better, Power Systems. I think they're the only two I've seen, maybe more, okay? They go all the way up to, I think, a 50-pounder, but basically you just roll this guy around, keep it off your neck. See how it's not on my neck? It just sits on my traps, and then I can stabilize it here. And this is called a repeat lunge, okay? One of my favorites for just destroying your legs. So left foot's back, I do my lunge, I bring my left foot up 2 inches, right foot goes out 2 inches, and then I repeat. Left foot, right foot, repeat. Left foot, right foot, repeat. And so you get into this rhythm where it's like a gallop almost. It's just this tiny little go, step, 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 and man, does it light you up. Not only do I have this extra load, which is good for like the vest, right? It's just a little extra weight for me to carry, but it's the same hip and the same quad, rep and rep and rep and rep, and it just destroys you. It just burns you good. Take a rest, then do the other side. And I'll do like 30 with my right leg and then rest 10 seconds, 30 with my left leg, take the sand roll off and do it again, 30 and 30. So you're kind of strip setting, but it gets you strong. Remember, you get thousands of reps you're gonna take, right, when you're out doing your hikes and your treks. So maximize this stuff. So let's talk expedition just really quick, okay? If you had an expedition, which we're talking about multi-days, like a couple of you have texted me and you said, oh, this is a great timing. I have a client who's about to go, you know, off to do this, or they're gonna try to hike to base camp or something like that. And quite a few of them, Elbrus, which is in Russia, Denali in Alaska, you have to trek in gear as part of your expedition. So part of the trek is you carry like 100 to 120 pound sled of all your equipment behind you. You drag it through the snow for a couple of days. And so part of that training can come from any kind of sled, but I love this sled. It's the Tank M1 from Torque. I don't get any money, everybody. I forgot to say that at the beginning. I don't get any money from any of these equipment companies. I have no ties to anyone, okay? But what I do is I don't like wasting money. And if I find something that's worth the money, I'll tell you about it. So when I did mine today, I wore my vest, 20 pounds, and I pulled this guy behind me, which is all hip girdle, glute extension, 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 quad support. I mean, it just targets perfect. So the whole way I'm going, I've got about 250 in total. It's like 115 of actual poundage, but then I'm on a level 2 as far as there's magnets that create greater tensions, which is the best part of this. From a rehab component to a constant tension, I can put it on 3 and I have to push it downhill. Like it just bogs, and you're like, if you want to go faster, you got to grind it. So that's what I love about this is I work downhill just as hard as I'm going up, right? So you can work this in and be like, if you got a field or some space or even just in the gym and be like, look, trek this down and back, down and back. We're going to do 2 minutes of dragging here. And maybe you start with 2 kettlebells, right? And like in a minute in, you're like, okay, drop the bells, keep going. And they do another minute of just going. It'll turn with you. You can do circles like on a track and just going. And then after that, okay, click out. Let's go step ups. Let's go this. Let's go that. And then active recovery, wall sit. Okay, all right, quick sip of water while wall sitting, back to the trek, click this in. Because that's basically what they're going to get is like a moderate tempo over and over and over again. And that's what Dave Hahn was telling us, like in the day before base camp. He goes, you should never sprint and you shouldn't be strolling. There's a happy medium in between where we can talk, but it's not comfortable, right? So it's like a 65% effort, but I need you to do that for like 8 hours. And so if I can get really uncomfortable for an hour, you're like, man, I've got this threshold that I can push for 45, 50, 60 minutes, right? Then working at 30% lower for longer bouts, no big deal, right? It'll still suck, but it's not that bad. And then when you think about your walking and hikings, even just basic stuff, you're going out on a 30-minute walk a day, creating an opportunity to not only build all the strength and support it where you can do it every day and you feel good, but I don't want to just go for a stroll. My intention is I am out for an exercise-based walk. So I call it like you got somewhere to go, right? I am on a mission. And you've seen these people where they're like, gotta go. I'm in a hurry. Gotta use the bathroom. Like they're trucking it, right? Like that mindset, I want you to carry that into 70, 80, 90-year-olds. I don't care. You're not out for a stroll after dinner. That's a whole different thing. This is your 30-minute walk for exercise. So like, let's get after that. If you guys don't know what fartlek training is, look that up. That's not a made-up word. That's someone's last name. And it's undulations and effort, where you'll do 2 minutes of high pace, got to go to the bathroom tempo, and then a minute of strolling, and then 2 minutes of up and a minute of strolling. And so it's these little spikes like HIIT training, but just for cardio. And so it breaks up the intensity in which you go at. You can do that. You walk as hard and as fast as you can for 30 seconds and then stroll for 30 and do little sprints there. Like create a different challenge every day where it's not, let's go to the block and back. It takes me 30 minutes every time. Where is the challenge? Where is the change? Where is the difference? So you should feel that challenge in that bout of, okay, if I walk for 30 minutes today, I'm going to go to 15 minutes and then turn back. I'm not going to go to the street sign 4 blocks away and back because that's what it did the first time. You're going to get in better shape. You're going to get stronger from all of your strength training. You're going to start to create a longer gait and a longer stride. And now 15 minutes might take you 6 blocks instead of 4. And then you come back. So I like prepping and setting my time, my efforts for the day in terms of walking or running or something like that. Unless you're training for a specific, like a marathon, something like that, is by time. I want you to walk for 30 minutes today, 30 minutes next week, and then 35 minutes the third week, and then 35 minutes again, and then 40. And we can create undulations in our efforts, and then have a recovery week where they only do 2 10-minute walks, just like we would do in the weight room. Same idea. But if I'm just not feeling great, I still get 30 minutes in. If I'm feeling awesome and I go after it, I still got 30 minutes in. Like that's the mindset to this. From the most simplicity of walking daily, everything that I just showed you will make someone better at that. Keep you from rolling your ankles with the stability, keep you from good balance with all the different angles of step ups, right? The drop step lunge, the fall preventative components, the different grip strengths and holding the wrist and all that. Like all of that lends from the most simple 30 minutes of walking a day to I'm trekking and climbing to Mount Everest, which if you do, you're paying someone else to carry most of your stuff. But in a lot of these expedition styles, Aconcagua, Denali, Elbrus, you're going to have to pull gear for some time. And as much as I wanted to do that, like I really wanted that. Denali was my goal. I really wanted to go climb that. That was the part I was looking most forward to, because I'm a workhorse. Like I can pull stuff. I can trek that thing all day. That's my jam. It's when we have to sprint. That's when that's when it goes downhill. I'm not built for that. So, all right, gang. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me throw my contact information back up here for you. If you have any questions, there's my email. There's trainingtheolderadult.com. Remember to go on there and just give us your email, register for the Athletic Solutions, because you're going to get the CEU, and we don't mail that out till the end of the year. We send it to everybody. So if you've signed up for one, you're good. You don't have to go do it again. But as long as you've signed up for at least one of these, you'll get that CEU certificate at the end of the year. Our last one, the Ski Strong one, is September. You'll get it right after that. All right. Any questions? Any questions? Dangling a kettlebell and a belt, amazing. Elizabeth, thank you. I hope you're sincere on that and not teasing me. Yeah, it's my favorite way to squat, because I get to take my back out of it, and I'll elevate. I'll stand on 2 6-inch boxes or 2 12-inch boxes and work on my depth. And then I only have like a 70-pound kettlebells are my heaviest. So I eventually built up to where I could have 2 of them on there, which looks super goofy, like I was saying, but that's how you can kind of challenge, you know? And that was about the point where I was like, yeah, this is about as much load as I can handle here. And you'll have people that are stronger that can do more, or I have a Joyce the other day, my client, she did a belt squat with a 4-kilo kettlebell. So it was at 9 pounds, but I wanted to distribute that load different, let her work through a range. All of that is good challenge type stuff. All right. Emily, thank you. I appreciate the nice comments, everybody. Thank you very much. Interested in single leg components regarding plantar fasciitis. Is that just with calf contractions? Single leg comment, sorry, regarding plantar fasciitis. Single leg. So I'm trying to think of, I think it's the NSCA's Strength and Conditioning Journal. They had a unilateral versus contralateral comparison that showed like the block leg versus your non-dominant leg, right? Dominant versus non-dominant. And it talked about like higher susceptibilities to certain injuries, because it was your block leg. If you were going to kick a soccer ball with your right foot, your left leg is your block leg. Your right foot, you would call it your dominant leg because you kick with it. I would call it your more dexterous leg. Your left leg is actually stronger. Think of your left arm. That's the one you put all the groceries in while you unlock the door with the keys with your right hand, your more dexterous hand. But your left arm actually gets stronger. It's just not as coordinated. It's a little dumber, right? But it's actually stronger in most cases. So that's, you have to designate what kind of dominant are we talking about? Dexterity or strength? That the strength side is the one that was more susceptible to injury, like a plantar fasciitis or something, because it does more of the workload when you're fatigued. And so that was, if I had to draw a comparison from single legs, it would be that your dominant, your stronger, your block leg might be the one that would become injured, because as you fatigue while you're running, walking, jogging, whatever it is you're doing, that leg's like, I got you, I'll take over, I'll do more work. And that's the one that's more susceptible. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that is something to concern yourself with, is make sure you're looking at imbalances and we call it seeking muscular equality. Try to seek muscular equality with each leg as independently as much as possible. You can do a 6-second eccentric single leg sit to stand. That's a lot of S's. So I can stand on my left foot, 6 seconds. It takes me to go all the way down to the box to unload, and then I can stand up and do it again. You should be able to do a 6-second on each leg. And I bet if you guys tried it now, like your dominant leg, my left leg, I can do 6, and my right leg, I get to about 4 and I drop, right? So that's what I mean by seeking muscular equality. Whichever of those ones that's lacking a little bit more of the strength, that one's going to be more susceptible to immediate injury right away. The other one, your dominant leg, will be more susceptible to long-term once fatigued, but try to get them as equal and as strong as possible. And I would say that's kind of your red flag, your warning sign for an injury is coming if you're bilaterally dominating with one leg, right? In this case, it would be unilateral. It'd be a unilateral dominance. But just kind of think about that stuff. You guys have seen it when a client's deadlifting or when they're squatting, their hips shift. That's bilateral dominance. They're telling the stronger side, do more. It's supposed to be 50-50, but they're shifting 60-40, 60-40, because they're fatiguing out. And so the strong hip's like, I got you, I'll do this. That leg's gonna get hurt first because it's doing too much work, it's overloading. All right. Any other questions? Let me scan up here. PDFs, yep, I'll have those up here. I just got to upload this and they'll be on the website. All right, gang, it looks like it. Thank you, everybody. You're the best. Love you guys. Have a great day. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.